Hello guys, welcome back to another Genshin video. In today's Genshin video, I'm going to be doing a Lisa guide for you guys. Lisa is a very popular character amongst a lot of people. Let's just say she's on the sucky side of characters. But there's a huge fan base for her nonetheless, and I personally do enjoy her. And yeah, so basically I'm going to be showing off the best teams, weapons, artifacts, and showing off all of her talents and constellations. So yeah, let's get right into it. Alright, let's talk about her talents real quick. Her normal attack is a pretty normal 4-string attack for normal attacks, but it actually teleports it backwards, which is kinda cool. And yeah, there's nothing else about the normal attack. Now, her elemental skill, Violet Arc. If you actually press Violet Arc, it will send a homing elemental orb, and when it hits an opponent, it will apply a stack of conductive status, which has a maximum of 3 stacks. Now, if you actually hold this ability, you'll actually be sitting still for a little bit, and once the circle below you gets done filling up, Lisa will have a lot more electro on it, and then you can release it, and it will do damage to all nearby opponents, and it will do extra damage based on the number of conductive stacks that they have. The cool thing about the press on this is that if you have a lot of enemies clumped up together, and hit one of them with the press, it can actually bounce between them, and you can get like 3 stacks in 1 or 2 press, so that can be pretty useful if you see a lot of group of enemies. Then over here you can see that the press damage is pretty low, but then each conductive hold damage gets exponentially more damage as you have more conductive stats, but the holding cooldown is 16 seconds, so it's a long cooldown once you get done holding. At like level 13 you can have like 1000 plus scaling on a stack 3, so it seems like it does a lot of damage, and it really does, but you do have to do a lot of build up. Another problem with this ability is that you do really just stand still while holding this R2, but you do have to use like a shield character or just hope you don't get knocked over while you're holding down the R2. Now her elemental burst Lightning Rose. This ability summons a lamp that unleashes powerful lightning bolts launching surrounding opponents and dealing electro damage. And throughout the entire duration it will continue spewing out lightning bolts. This ability gets pretty cool with one of her passives, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But this ability is pretty alright. It doesn't really do too much damage, I can see from the scaling of level 6. I think it sprays out 29 times, but I'm not really sure. But it doesn't really do all that crazy damage over the period of time. And it also has an 80 energy cost, so it's one of the more expensive bursts in the entire game for the little that you actually get. But it is pretty good once you get one of the passives. Now the first passive is when you do a charge attack and it hits an opponent, it will apply the conductive status to them. So this is just another way to apply conductive status effects. For example, if you're a main DPS Lisa, you'll be doing a lot of charge attack to apply the conductive status, and because her charge attacks do have a lot of scaling as well. Now this is the passive most people will use Lisa for. Opponents hit by an elemental burst will have their defense decreased by 50% for 10 seconds. This one is really good. It's the main reason why a lot of people use Lisa, because this is different from elemental resistance and physical resistance reduction. This is the overall defense decrease. So it's a bit more useful than the elemental reductions, and you get this just from popping her elemental burst. So this is why she's really good for support. And then her last passive is that when she crafts a potion, she has a 20% chance to refund a portion of the crafting materials. So yeah, that's all for the talents. I'd say if you're going for a support Lisa, definitely try to do Lightning Rose and Violet Arc. You can do either one you want. I did Lightning Rose and then Violet Arc. And then if you're a main DPS, you want to do your normal attacks, Violet Arc, and then Lightning Rose. So yeah, that's all the talents. Okay, now let's go into constellations. All the constellations don't really have too much going on about them, so I'm going to go through this part pretty quickly. Her first constellation is that Lisa gets 2 energy for every opponent hit while holding her elemental skill, which a maximum of 10 energy can be regenerated in this manner. This is a really good constellation because of course her energy cost of her burst is 80, so if you do hit 5 opponents and get 10 energy back, it can be really useful. Her second constellation is while holding her elemental skill, she gets increased defense by 25% and increases her resistance to interruption. This constellation is pretty good just to keep you from stopping your elemental skill while you're holding it, but most of the time you're all going to be running a shield person if you do want to use Lisa, unless you're just built differently. Constellation 3 increases the level of the elemental burst. Constellation 4 increases the number of lightning bolts released by Lightning Rose by 1 to 3. I don't really know why it's RNG. I don't know why it couldn't just be 3 lightning bolts extra no matter what. So this constellation's pretty meh in my opinion. Constellation 5 increases the level of elemental skill. And Constellation 6 is probably her best constellation for ease of use and just to make things go by a little quicker, is when Lisa takes the field, she applies 3 stacks of conductive status onto nearby opponents, which can happen every 5 seconds. So this one's really helpful if you see C6 Lisas just pop in, pour the elements of skill, get all the damage in, and then pop out. It's really good for that playstyle. And even for main DPS Lisas, if you want to pop in, do your hold E, and then do a lot of damage with your normal attacks. So yeah, there's all of the constellations. Like I said, I was gonna go through that pretty quickly. Nothing too crazy is going on. Definitely her best constellations are probably 1 and 6, I'd say. 6 just merely for the ease of use and just easy conductive statuses. And then Constellation 1 for more energy. Now let's take a look at Lisa's weapons. There's a lot of weapons that you can use pretty well on Lisa, and one of them is the new Hakushin Ring, which can be easily crafted at the forge after you unlock the blueprint. This weapon's pretty good for it because it gives an energy recharge substat, and after the character equips this weapon triggers an elemental reaction, which has to be an electro type reaction, the other involved element will receive a 10% elemental damage bonus for that whole entire team lasting 6 seconds. This one's pretty good if you're running like an electro charge team, if you have like a Xingqiu and a Lisa, and you want to buff your Xingqiu's damage by a lot. It will give them a 10% elemental damage bonus, and this is actually the one that I use because I just think it's pretty nice. Another good one for support and main DPS Lisa is actually the Widsith because it has a crit damage substat which is very beneficial, and then when you swap to it, you'll just hold a E, do a lot of damage because you'll get the attack, elemental damage, or elemental mastery, and then after you hold your E, just pop your burst and then you're out. So this is pretty good for main DPS and support Lisa, just because of all the damage you can get and the crit damage substat. Another pretty alright weapon is the Favonius Codex. It gives a lot of energy recharge, but I wouldn't really recommend it all too much because it's a 3-star weapon which I think is actually better than this. And that 3-star weapon is Sterling Tales of Dragon Slayers. I think this weapon is extremely good on Lisa because I believe Lisa is better as a damage increaser than a damage dealer herself. Which is why a lot of people run with like 4-piece Noblesse and then put it on Sterling Tales of Dragon Slayers to buff your attack, and then switch to your main DPS after you use her burst, which decreases defense, and then if you have Sterling Tales on, you'll get even more attack increase. So that's how a lot of people actually use Lisa. This is definitely one of the best options, and it's actually the most used weapon on Lisa. Now for 5-star Catalyst, the Skyward Atlas is probably the best if you want to support Lisa or main DPS Lisa because its passive is pretty good. You can go Lost Play of the Winds though, because it has quick rate substat. If you're going main DPS Lisa, then you'll have a lot of time to get those stacks up because you'll be on her for 12 seconds to get the maximum stacks, and then you'll be able to do more damage with the Lost Prayer instead of Skyward Atlas. Mumia Dust can do more damage than the Skyward Atlas, but you do have to get all the stacks up and have a shield with her, so this is just mainly based on your playstyle. For support, the best one would be Skyward Atlas, and if you're going main DPS, then I'd probably say Lost Prayer. And yeah, that's all for the weapons. Once again, the Hakushin Ring is really easy to craft and it's free for all players, so if you do have this, I advise holding this up for your support Lisa. Widsith is also really good for the crit damage substat and its passive, and Sterling Tales is also extremely good because it increases the attack of your main DPS. So yeah, that's all for the weapons. Now let's talk about Lisa's artifacts. A lot of Lisa's artifacts are pretty straightforward, so I'm pretty sure I don't have to do too much explaining, but the best combinations, I will say, is if you want the most burst damage, go for a 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. Its 2-piece is really good for Lisa for energy recharge, and then the 4-piece increases elemental burst damage based on your energy recharge, so this could be pretty good for burst Lisas. But once again, I think Lisa is way better as a damage increaser than a damage dealer. So I personally recommend running 4-piece Noblesse on your Lisa. It will increase the elemental burst damage already, and then using the elemental burst will increase all party members' attack by 20%. This is really good for Lisa because now you have Sterling Tales of Dragon Slayers. Then you have the attack boost from Noblesse. And then you have the minus 15% defense from the elemental burst. It's really simple to use and it's really good. And then of course you can always run 2-piece Stunning Fury and 2-piece Noblesse Oblige for more elemental burst damage and more electro damage as well. And if you decide to run a main DPS Lisa like I will do eventually, then the best combinations are actually Thundering Fury 2-piece and Gladiators 2-piece. Gladiators are Shimenawa since they do have the same 2-piece. Now for main stats on your Lisa, if you want to run a support Lisa, I recommend Energy Recharge, And if you want to main DPS Lisa, then I recommend attack percentage. The goblet for both support and main DPS is electro damage bonus. And then the circlet for main DPS and support is crit rate or crit damage depending on your ratio. And the substats you probably want to be going for are crit rate and crit damage, followed by energy recharge, and then attack percentage on the side. And that goes for support and main DPS. So yeah, her artifacts are pretty straightforward. So just to recap, if you want to main in main DPS, I recommend 2-piece Stoning Fury and 2-piece Gladiators or Shimenawas. And if you're wanting a support Lisa, my biggest recommendation is 4-piece Noblesse if you don't have one already. If you already have a character in your team who has 4-piece Noblesse, then I do recommend wanting 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate instead. And then 2-piece Noblesse, 2-piece Thundering Fury. And for the main stats, you want either attack percentage or energy recharge depending on your main DPS or support. Electro damage bonus goblet for both of the walls. And also crit rate or crit damage for both of the walls depending on your ratio. And then for both main DPS and support, the substats you want to be going for is crit rate and crit damage, then energy recharge, then attack percentage. So yeah, that's basically all for the artifacts. Okay, it's time to go into the team section of this video. There's not really any crazy team combinations you can do with Lisa. She's more of a person that can also be fit into many other teams. So I'm just gonna highlight a few of the teams and a few of the combinations that you could do with your Lisa. One of the teams I want to showcase in this video is actually this Raiden Shogun, Xingqiu, Lisa Bennett. Lisa is pretty good replacement for Xiangling if you want to use Xiangling in another team. And also she's Electro with Raiden, so they both generate elemental particles for each other, and they get the elemental resonance for Electro, which generates even more electro particles on top of that. And Xingqiu and Lisa are a pretty good combination because of the electro charge damage. If you have Xingqiu's burst and Lisa's burst both up at the same time, you'll see a lot of electro charge damage numbers. Of course, Beta would be a better wall for that electro charge comb than Lisa, but if you want to use Lisa, here you go. Another thing I like to do from time to time is when Zhongli and Lisa together, because Zhongli reduces the elemental and physical resistance, and then Lisa on top of that will reduce the defense. Because these two characters together will make your enemy a lot weaker to your attacks. And then of course, she does work best with another electro character just to get her elemental burst up way more often because of that 80 elemental energy cost. You could use someone like Fischl. You could also use it with someone like Beidou. Although both of the energy costs are 80, electro characters together will just help each other out a lot because of the elemental resonance. And for those who don't know what the elemental resonance is, it's that when you pop Superconduct, Overload, and Electro Charge, they have a 100% chance to generate an electro elemental particle, which can happen every 5 seconds. So yeah, that's why she's also really good for another electro character. So yeah, I think you guys get the gist of it. You can use her in a lot of teams that just need some defense shred. She's not exactly best in any teams, but she's not exactly bad either. That's kind of why she's in the limbo of maybe good, maybe bad, but at the same time being bottom tier. But she is an extremely likable character and I think she's pretty fun. So yeah, in conclusion, just use it in any teams that need some defense shred, and if you do have an extra slot for a team, put her in there and maybe you see if you like her in there. So yeah, that's all for the team building. You guys know what's happening. I think it's time for a little bit of a showcase. But before that, I'm going to change up my Lisa's build a little bit, so I'll be right back with you. Alright, I now have my Lisa on the 4-piece Noblesse set. And then her stats are 810 attack, crit rate of 52, crit damage of 94, energy recharge of 188, and with an electro damage bonus of 46%. Okay, we're going to pull up on these dudes real quick, and then I'm going to get the Zhongli shred. And then we're just gonna get her elemental burst up real quick, so I'll be right back with y'all. Okay, I just ended up leaving and coming back to the domain when I had my actual burst up. So we're gonna do some damage tests. Right now I do 913 on the crit damage of my Ningguang's normal attack, sorry. And then we're gonna pop the resistance shred. And I do 1700 per crit. And now we're gonna reproc the shred. And this time put down Lisa's elemental burst. And now I do, if I can crit, 2500 per normal attack crit. And then my charge attacks are up to 15.9 thousand damage as well. So I can see with a Noblesse set, along with Rolling Tales of Dragon Slayers, your Lisa can give you much more damage. And then what a good thing about some DPS Lisa is if you switch to her, you mainly just want to hold down her E. And then after you get done holding down her E, then you just pop a burst and then you switch on. So that's a really good thing about Lisa as well. And there we go. And I can see Jinx Shell is really helpful for parking a lot of Electro Charge and doing a lot more damage on the side. So yeah, that's it for the showcase. Well, that's all for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys now know what weapons, artifacts, and teams to put your Lisa on. She may be bottom tier, but she's one of my more favorite characters in this game. I actually liked her from the very beginning when I saw her lightning attacks and saw how much AoE she could actually do. But once again, I was a noob back then, so maybe I don't know what I was talking about. But anyway, hope this video was helpful. Try out Lisa if you haven't. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. We'll see. But that's all for me, and I'll see you guys in the next video.